thank you for the introduction and thank you for attending this last panel, I understand, of this part today. We are here to talk about legal tech, artificial intelligence and legal services, artificial intelligence and technology, and legal education. And I'd like to start by asking Alvaro his expertise and his knowledge, and what is the idea of how much will technology, digitalization, and artificial intelligence impact legal services provision, both in terms of how much is the profession going to change, and maybe also if you can add, what do you envision as a time frame? How okay. Short or how long is it going to take for this transformation?
All right, thank you. So yes, AI is affecting and will affect the legal profession dramatically. Depends on what report you read. This may take 10 years, 5 years from now. It will affect 40% of our tasks. It will take up to 60% of our tasks. So numbers change, but what it's clear that everybody agrees that our profession will change dramatically. And I think there's a clear reason for that, at least two reasons. One of them is that our profession is based on experience to some extent, and that experience is based on the number of impacts we've had in prior transactions, prior litigation, and that builds us as experienced attorneys. Well, that's part of the things that AI does very well. Receive impact, information, and then process that. And the second is that our profession is based on using the language in a very precise way. And LLMs are paramount in that. So if you combine the two capabilities and you then expose them to your legal profession, that means that there's room for fear and what's going to happen to us in the next years. And I guess there's a flip side to that. For startups, there's a very nice space to develop in the legal sector, because it's, as I said, it's going to change dramatically. But to your question, what kind of tasks will be affected? When you zoom in, so I talked about big numbers before, but when you zoom in, you see that not all of the things that we do will be affected by AI, I think. And even if you think of junior lawyers against more senior lawyers, their type of work will be more affected than, I'm hoping, ours. But even for senior lawyers, part of our work in terms of assessing the probability of success of a case, which is, as I said before, based on our experience, but we only have a limited experience. AI can have a broader experience. Will be affected too. And maybe that brings me to thinking about how different stages in the legal profession will be affected differently. I have a question for you, which is, how do law schools, top-notch law schools like yours, approach this type of skills for lawyers in their training?
In the past few months, every conversation I have had with recruiters, with heads of human resources at law firms or companies or our expert alumni, and when I ask them, so what is it that you're looking for in our next graduates, in the new intakes, now that you're using, that your company does an intensive use of technology for legal services, now that you're using AI. And they all agree that it is about the ability of making judgment and critical thinking. I think law schools need to test the tools, and I think law students need to work with the tools. But I seriously do not think that using the AI tools or the digital tools is that complex. I don't even think that this is the priority for a law school or for a university. I think the priority is teaching them to make a judgment. Now, they will have more information. They may take this judgment more precise and faster if they use AI in order to compare different legal systems, to compare different opinions. But I think there is actually an opportunity for law schools, because law schools do not need to teach legislation or jurisprudence by heart anymore at all. They don't even need to make students learn the theory by heart. They need to make sure that students will be ready to make judgments and to apply critical thinking in a few years, because we have to consider that when a student joins law school, there's at least 3, 4, or 5 years before these people will graduate and will be able to practice. So I see an opportunity for schools to focus much more on more deep and more intellectual issues than on learning jurisprudence or legislation. But I think this is a critical time for society, for legal practice, and also for academic institutions, because we also have to figure out how to use technology and artificial intelligence as a teaching tool, as a methodology, as a pedagogy. And there is a tension among academic institutions between those who think that we need to go back to using blackboards and pen and paper, and those who think that we need to take a step forward and we need to start testing and we need to try pilots that would not only prepare our students, but that will help the faculty to give more and better feedback to the students, to have artificial intelligence tools that will help the faculty grade their students in a more personalized way, and this is truly the way to go. Those who think that we need to stop students from bringing their laptops to exams, this is just gaining a few weeks or months, but I really have confidence that very soon academic institutions, and I mean universities, but also schools will figure out how to implement AI and digital tools that will make a more interesting and a more sophisticated pedagogy applied for their students.
Okay. As learning for me, critical thinking and kind of reshaping the way we approach to law and to learning law, not memorize anymore, but use different tools to approach to legal problem, which kind of drives me to think that there's a major breakthrough in the way we learn to be a lawyer and we act as lawyers, and what comes to my mind is a discussion I had a couple of weeks ago with some government representatives in terms of public policy and how to approach that from a public policy perspective. And they mentioned something that I think it's interesting to reflect on, which is that if you compare another technological breakthrough, the Industrial Revolution, to what's happening now, and you just think, well, the Industrial Revolution changed the way, for good, the way we worked, health environment, how jobs generally were treated, and even created massive efficiencies that translated into new types of jobs. I think that's totally true, but then again, when you zoom in, you see that there's a gap to that, and I think we're kind of in the same situation. Technology will certainly lead us to a more efficient approach to work in the legal sector as well, and may create new type of hybrid lawyers, technicians in a way, but that may take time. And I was thinking about building digital skills and building critical thinking. And there's a study, an economist called Enel made an analysis of those technological breakthroughs and developed an idea called the Enel's POS after his name. The POS is, technology skyrockets efficiency very fast. But then the profession that's underlying does not develop as fast. Yeah. So it takes time for people to get retrained in a way to catch up with that technology. And then, the final still photograph is everything changed for good. For a period of time, which is 50 years for that analysis, maybe not as long for now because things change very fast, but for a long time, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question is, how do we fill this gap in? And we were discussing with the government 3 approaches. First is regulation. Second is social compensation schemes. And third is learning things, learning new capabilities to be able to do this job. Regulation, I don't think we need more regulation. At least in Europe, we're very well equipped with the AI Act, which is it's a very regulatory-based approach, and I think we're in good terms there, although there's things to develop. I wouldn't advise, if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't advise governments to regulate further than that, because the flip side is that the sector will be affected if you regulate too far, and then will have competitive disadvantage against other territories. Second, yes, social compensation, and that's for sure. And then, re-skilling people. And when I think about that, and here comes a question to you. When I think about that, it's not just young students in universities like yours that have to be trained on this new way to approach the legal profession. There's also people like me who need training. So elder people in the profession, they need to adapt because they're losing their jobs otherwise. How do you approach that from a education institution?
I think it's true that there's a difference between teaching junior lawyers or junior law students and more senior ones. And what I see in my experience is that junior law students or lawyers are fully convinced about embracing AI. I've seen this test done at universities months ago when ChatGPT was launched, and faculty were asking their students 3 days after the platform was open, how many of you are using this? 90% of the students said, we are using this and we have the paying version. 3 days after. Most of the faculty in many universities were not using this. So students they're not only open, but they are determined to use this on their benefit. And as I said, I think they need to be trained on the ethical use of artificial intelligence. They need to be trained on how will artificial intelligence have an impact in society. They need to be asked the difficult questions of how do we use artificial intelligence but still limit privacy, still respect human rights, still respect constitutional rights. These are the difficult questions that we should be asking younger students and making students think about. Senior legal practitioners, my view is that it is not so much about learning how to use the tool or learning how to become an engineer or how to program. It is about seeing what the tool can do and making the decision that this is a cultural change and that your clients need this, your people at the company need this, that justice and public administration are going to use them, and rather be trained in how to motivate for change, how to do a cultural change in your institution, how to drive innovation in your institution. Mm-hmm. But I don't think for senior people it is so much about learning how to use this in isolation, because what the senior legal practitioners need to do is they need to convince all of their clients, all of their trainees, all of the younger staff to make the best use of it. So they need to lead the transformation, which is different than being an expert in using AI for legal services. So this is what I see for more experienced legal practitioners, both in the private and in the public sector, mm-hmm. because with our first instinct when we talk about legal tech is we think about business law and we think about the global law firms. But I think the biggest impact for society can be the use of AI for access to justice, to promote the rule of law, and for an improvement of justice administration. What is your view on this, Alvaro?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good topic. Mm. Well, I don't think that the judiciary is any different in terms of applying the law than private practitioners, although there's limitations. For sure, we don't want the AI to make the final decision on whether somebody is guilty or not. Or, some party A, must succeed over party B. That's definitely not the way we want things to be. And actually, the AI Act forbids that type of use of the AI. But I see a very positive way of using AI in the public administration in terms of applying the law. I'm sure you've all experienced that, but it takes years for things to be processed in court.
Too long, too much time sometimes.
Yeah, it takes very long, and you sometimes have to explain to the client how is that possible. But it takes time. So just processing, in terms of managing the process, the legal process, AI can do that very fast because there is as we call interlocutory decisions that can just be drafted by AI and then signed by the somebody in the court, not necessarily the judge. And on top of that, the judge, to be more precise on the legal reasoning, something that is used by law firms, we use it, is that you can present the facts of a case to an AI.
Yeah.
And that AI, if it's well trained and has a good access to a nice database, can give you arguments both for and against one thing, and even say, based on the information that I reviewed, party A should prevail over party B on that argument. Check if that's actually what's going on in this case, because in the past that's what happened 70% of the time. So it gives very, I think, valuable information for judges to know all, I wouldn't say all the case law, but at least part of the case law that's useful for that decision, and avoids part of that discussion we would like to have among lawyers, which is it depends on the judge.
Yeah.
Now, if you kind of strike through and delete that part of our advice that it depends on the judge, it depends less on the judge and more on the technicality of the law and how it's applied by judges, I think that's for the good for everyone.
So hopefully it will improve access to justice and it will make it faster, right? But the capacity of making the judgment will remain part of what the judge will always have to do, right?
Yeah, I think it must remain. And it's actually, this is not sci-fi. The judiciary is working on AI tools to foster technology in court and make processes faster. Maybe not the second part I was explaining, using that for final decisions, but it will come soon for sure.
So let's see if we can keep working together in order to improve access to justice, to use artificial intelligence for legal practice, both private legal practice and in public administration, and also in legal education. Thank you very much for attending this session.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, and I'm working a lot on AI. But when we talk about critical thinking, how do you see that people are going to develop critical thinking without going through all the stuff that we went through? I don't deserve that for anyone. Nobody wants to work 12 hours a day that we used to do it. But once we survive, we develop some type of critical thinking. How do you see that people are going to be able to do that without going through that journey?
I'm a bit skeptical about shortcuts. There's a skills about critical thinking, just like there's a skills about pure logic, which are philosophical in a way, and then it teaches you how to think. But that are necessary tools, but I don't think they're sufficient to get where we want. You need some experience at least. In my team, I keep telling the people who are very tech savvy, because I'm the tech partner, the tech savvy, they know how to use all the tools, and I keep telling them, your job here is to think. Think, and then have the machine help you, but think. And I totally see a difference between a very young lawyer and a more experienced one in terms of how you see the overall approach to the case. And I think that needs time. They can build on skills, on how to think. Engineers are a very good example, because you're taught at least, from what I see around me, you're taught how to think. No, that's right. I mean, you have good thinking skills. At least part of the way of the way you think is based on a process that you've learned in university, right? I think that's for lawyers as well, but I don't think it's sufficient. It's necessary, and it will become more necessary, but not sufficient. You need some experience as well.
I think we are out of time.
Oh.
There's next session going on soon. Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you.